Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you had a good lunch break and were able to catch up with some of your emails and visit the exhibition booths. I'm delighted to welcome James Meads here this afternoon to the SAPEX conference. Thank you, James, for being with us all the way from Bulgaria. James will be talking on Achieve More with Less, driving value with affordable digital procurement solutions. James was born and raised in Birmingham in the UK, but he's lived in 3 different countries and worked in 5, including South Africa. He has 18 years of procurement knowledge from roles in major automotive and FMCG companies. He hosts the Procure Tech podcast, so I would suggest you reach out to him on LinkedIn and see how you can find your way around that. And James, in the spare time, enjoys running, mountain biking, and skiing. And he loves coming to Africa because of our warm hospitality and amazing food. So we look forward to your engagement on the discussion and Q&A chat boxes, and reminding that the recordings will all be available to you next week. And thank you, James. Over to you.
Claire, thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here and to be able to speak at this wonderful conference. Obviously, being based in Europe and this being virtual, it enables opportunities that may not otherwise have been there. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and let me know if that's...
We can see your slides, James. Thank you.
With that, fantastic. Okay. So we're going to be talking today a little bit about digital procurement. Certainly procurement in most business, or at least in most manufacturing businesses, impacts supply chain to a great extent, especially when we're looking at procurement of raw materials and of non-production materials to aid the production process. So we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into the digital procurement tools that are out there, debunking some of the misconceptions, explaining how they're different from ERP systems, and looking at how they can benefit your business, and how to go on this journey if you're interested to learn more about digital procurement. So Claire already introduced me a little bit. So I was born and raised in Birmingham in the UK. The good thing about being from Birmingham is it makes you appreciate everywhere else. I spent most of my professional career in Germany, 12 years in Germany, which was a wonderful time. They have, just like South Africa, they have great wine, especially white wine. So it was a lovely time living in Germany. I've been a procurement pro since 2002. So I joined Jaguar Land Rover way back then when they were part of Ford, and started my career there, and then moved on through a couple of different automotive suppliers, and then landed in the FMCG industry in 2010 when I realized that recessions aren't much fun when you work in the automotive industry, and then decided to go and work for a company that makes toilet paper, because everyone needs that in a recession, as we saw during COVID last year. My final role before I left the procurement world was managing logistics procurement in sub-Saharan Africa for a well-known Fortune 100 FMCG company, American company that has a big presence in South Africa. Part of that included, I spent 3 months in Lagos, which was an interesting tropical holiday, and had, I think it was 3 different trips down to South Africa during that time as well, when we were running tenders on transportation and on warehousing and on brokerage and 4PL. The good thing about running your own business means that it gives you a bit more say in terms of where you base yourself. So I'm now location independent, or digital nomad as the cool term is. I base myself in Sofia, Bulgaria, but essentially the good thing is hopefully I'll be able to come to South Africa during the European winter and enjoy everything that your country has to offer when it's cold and dark and snowing here. I'm the typical Aries. and probably the typical European as well, because I love football, I love smelly cheese, I like hiking in the mountains as well as skiing. And if there's one thing that you can get me to do anything for, it's Spanish cured pork products. Spanish pigs just taste better. I'm a procurement consultant and also have my own podcast all about digital procurement. There's a link to that at the end of the presentation if you'd like to check it out and learn a little bit more after this presentation. And of course, I am a digital procurement evangelist because I hate seeing wasteful processes, and I'm all about doing things better, smarter, and faster, and challenging some of the conventional norms. There's a poll, if you go to the poll section, and the poll that I'm asking here is, does your organization use an ERP system? ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, because I hate acronyms as well. The reason I'm asking that is part of this slide. ERP systems like SAP and Oracle and JD Edwards, their interfaces and their whole concept were developed and they were launched back in the 1990s. And I came of age in the mid-1990s, and depending on your taste in music, the two biggest bands at that time were Oasis and the Spice Girls. And what I want to say here is that legacy is great, but if you're still using something like SAP to power what you're doing in procurement today, the technology is 20 years out of date. It can do a lot of things. It's a wonderful tool. I'm not defaming SAP or Oracle or any ERP system, but to get it to do what you want for procurement, it's not the best tool to do that. Why isn't it? Because ERP systems weren't designed with procurement in mind. If you cast your minds back to the mid-1990s, certainly in Europe, and even more so, I would imagine, in emerging markets like South Africa, procurement was not the strategic function that is a fulcrum of the supply chain like it is today. It was predominantly back then a very administrative, very transactional function. So if you're using your ERP system to run everything in procurement, it won't give you good spend analytics. You can't really run strategic sourcing events through it. You know, you can only do spot buy, request for quotations in there. It has pretty much nothing around contract management or supplier performance monitoring other than being able to manage OTIF requirements. You can't really have strategic supplier relationship management through an ERP system. The procure to pay functions in ERPs are very antiquated. They're not very user friendly. It's difficult to access and put your fingers on different parts of data and to run analytics. It definitely doesn't do anything around supply chain risk management. You know, the buzzwords of today, sustainability, diversity, triple bottom line, those things didn't really exist 20 years ago, did they? Or if they did, it was very much a fringe movement back then. So before we move on to this slide, there's another poll, if you can just pop into the poll section. And I'd be interested to know, and we're going to look at the answers of the polls and just discuss those briefly at the end of the presentation. But I'm really curious to know whether you are using any digital procurement tools currently in your organization. So the poll is, are you still using email, SharePoint, and Excel, or are you actually currently using a specific digital procurement solution? And by that, I don't mean an ERP system. I mean something that is specifically designed with procurement in mind. Because what I want to do is to try and debunk some common misconceptions about digital procurement tools. Number one is that they're prohibitively expensive. And yes, some of them are. You know, if we look at the ones that are designed to be very feature rich and aimed at enterprise level clients, then yes, they are expensive. Not as expensive as ERP systems, but they are beyond the reach of most sort of mid-market, mid-cap enterprises. The other thing that tends to be thought of when you mention digital procurement or e-procurement is that these solutions are just designed to run e-auctions or e-sourcing events. And while a lot of them can do that, and certainly some of the early runners and some of the early technology in this space was pretty much designed with that in mind. I mean, I remember back in 2003 when I worked at Jaguar Land Rover, we were running online quotes for new vehicle programs. Even back then, I mean, the functionality and the user experience was very was quite coarse, but we were able to do it. Those functions, those tools that were designed, 20-ish years ago, they're still out there. I mean, Ariba, for example, was one of them. That's been around since 1998, 1999. But there's so much come on the market now around solving specific problems, very niche problems to different parts of procurement, that the market just has mushroomed in the last sort of 12 to 24 months. And then the final misconception is that digital transformation of procurement takes years to plan and to implement. And yes, it can do if you want to do a complete end-to-end transformation. But if you've just got a specific problem that you want to fix, for example, invoices getting lost, or a lot of day-to-day repetitive work around raising, sending, and approving purchase orders, that particular problem can be solved within days and weeks rather than months and years. So just to give a bit of a differentiation between what ERP systems do versus what enterprise level digital procurement tools do versus what best of breed digital procurement tools can do to try and differentiate some of the characteristics. So ERP systems like SAP and Oracle are server-based. They have a very outdated user interface that, like I said, stems from the fact that they were designed and implemented in the mid-1990s as their first version. They're not very intuitive for the average Joe. So if you're a finance professional and you're using this every day and you know it inside out, then that's great. But if you're a production planner, or if you're a maintenance engineer, or if you're an operational procurement person, you're only going to probably know 2 or 3 command functions of that ERP system, which basically means that all of the data in there is locked away in silos, and it's very, very difficult for you to get your hands on, because it requires a lot of training to be a power user of these systems because of their complexity. If you want to do any sort of custom solution or custom report or modify them in any way, I mean, these are how these big software companies make their money with any sort of rework and ongoing consulting, because it's so expensive and cumbersome to do it. And essentially, they were designed to be an enterprise finance and S&OP tool. They were not designed with procurement in mind. And the kicker, obviously, is, as anyone knows that's bought IT or that's involved in any way with maintaining or servicing an ERP system, they're extremely expensive. So about 15 years ago, some solutions started to come on the market that were offering essentially enterprise level solutions to the procurement process, which is sourcing through to contracting. And those have evolved and developed over time. And just to name some names, if you may have heard of them, the most popular solutions out there that fall into this bracket are SAP Ariba, Coupa, iValua, Jagger, Basware, TradeShift, they're the main ones, Zycus. And as opposed to ERP systems, these are cloud-based. So, it's easier to update them when they issue a new version. You don't have to go through a major IT project every time they bring a new version onto the market. They have a much more user-friendly interface than the ERP systems, and they are designed for procurement professionals. So these 3 things, fantastic. Where they tend to fall down is they require a major IT resources to plan and implement a solution such as this because they are very complex pieces of software. If you want any non-standard applications or modifications to them, similar to ERP systems, they are pretty expensive to add on and to customize. And if you're looking for something that does everything in your procurement or source to contract process, okay, then these are great solutions. But if you have a specific solution that's giving you a problem, or a specific 2 or 3 solutions problems that are giving you a headache, these sort of all-encompassing suites don't provide a world-class solution to any of the specific things that they do. And the price is definitely cheaper than an ERP system, but it's still considerably more expensive than what I'm going to show you now, which is best of breed procurement technology. These solutions are also cloud-based. They're also very, very user-friendly, with the whole customer experience, the Amazonization of the internet, as we say, and they were all as well designed for procurement professionals. Where they differentiate themselves in how they're different from the all-encompassing cloud-based source-to-contract solutions on the previous slide are that they can be up and running in a few days. And the reason they can be up and running in a few days is because their biggest selling point is their simplicity. They're easy to use. You can easily connect them to your ERP system if you want to, because certainly SAP now has an app store, and some of these solutions now have been approved by SAP and are sat inside their app store, and you can use them in conjunction with SAP, so you don't necessarily have to run them in a silo. You can punch out of SAP and punch back in if you're using them for a specific part of your source to contract process or supplier management process. Typically, they all solve one problem, but they do that one task very comprehensively. And the kicker is these solutions are affordable. And if we're looking at the lower end of the market, even if you're a pretty small business, and I can't think in rand, I'm afraid, because there's just too many zeros in there. But if I talk in dollars, you can get these solutions now for around $10,000 per year. So it's very, very affordable, even to $10, $20 million businesses. So what are the hard benefits of digital procurement technology? Well, the first one is that it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it just improves the level of data that you have around you. And as we all know now, good data drives good decisions. So the hard benefit that you're obviously going to see is a measurable P&L improvement, and that can come in different ways. So material cost savings, or PPV, purchase price variance, a lower total cost of operation. If through the actions of what you're doing in your procurement, you can save on energy, or you can increase OEE. It will drive a reduction in operational and administrative headcount, or at least it will enable you to move otherwise talented individuals away from doing day-to-day spade work and getting them to perform a more strategic role. It can help drive innovation by having platforms where you can collaborate more with suppliers on things like innovation and product development. It can also drive 360-degree supplier relationship management as well, in terms of managing your supplier more holistically and more real time, using technology to have all of that data in one place rather than have it stuck in somebody's inbox or on somebody's C drive or on SharePoint, which, let's be honest, has a dreadful user interface. It's horrible to use. It will also give you cash flow improvements through reducing the amount of maverick spend and bringing more of what is spent within an organization under the radar and under the orbit of procurement. If stakeholders are using programs that they enjoy using and find simple to use, rather than having to battle with an antiquated user experience in an ERP system, then they're less likely to go around the procurement process to get what they want to buy. Final question at the end of this slide: do you think sales would tolerate messy customer data? Because if you go into most organizations, they don't really know what they buy. And I'm including here large corporates. They know what they're spending on raw materials, but when you look at indirect spend, indirect services, non-production materials, spend data often is atrociously messy, even in large corporate organizations. If we move on to the soft benefits, probably the biggest one is that it enables procurement to have fact-based discussions with internal business partners. And especially in a manufacturing environment, suppliers are usually as good or as bad as their last delivery. And especially operations directors and plant managers tend to have pretty short minds and tend to have a bit of amnesia when it comes to supplier performance. So enabling us to have that fact-based discussion with our stakeholders through having good data enables us then to have more pragmatic decision-making process around how and when we implement change of suppliers or bringing in, for example, material changes or spec changes to drive cost reduction or operational efficiency. It reduces the amount of firefighting and the amount of time spent on repeatable clerical tasks. Digitization can also give you much faster execution of invoice and PO approvals. And in turn, what that does is it reduces the impact on operations, because guess what? You're not going to have your accounts on stop because accounts payable have lost the invoice, or because there's been some sort of human error and the bank account for the supplier has been inputted wrong, which means they've not been paid, or it means that the purchase order has gone to the wrong person to be approved, or that someone's not checked his email. You can have purchase order approvals in an app instead of having a busy person having to go into an ERP system and approve their order. As a result of that, it improves the relationship between procurement and internal business stakeholders, because procurement then are no longer as resentful of spending half of their time doing $10 an hour admin tasks, and instead they're able to build those relationships with internal business partners and do ultimately what they're employed to do. Procurement is not employed to resolve accounts problems and chase up deliveries. What procurement is employed to do is to drive savings, to drive value, to improve cash flow, and to drive the bottom line of the business, which ultimately then impacts everyone's performance in an organization. And the other one is it brings higher levels of compliance to procurement policies as well, through everyone sort of being rowing in the same canoe towards the same objective. So that's enough of the theory. What about some real world applications that can benefit from using digital procurement tools? And unfortunately, because of time, I'm not going to be able to go into all of these in detail, but I will pick 3 of them just to dive into those a little bit more. So let's take spend analytics first of all. As I mentioned on one of the previous slides, every company knows what they sell, but not many companies truly understand what they buy. And through having a spend analytics module or investing in a standalone spend analytics solution that sits in the cloud and that can categorize all of your supplier spend data down to level 2, 3, or even 4, when you look at the UN SPSC codes that are the most common taxonomy out there. Having that degree of spend analytics and doing that cleaning of your supplier spend data, it gives the buyer much more leverage in the way that they manage their supply base, because it gives visibility of, do we have 10 suppliers that are supplying the same thing when in reality we only need 1? The classic example is office stationery. Why do you need more than one supplier of office stationery? There is no logical reason other than I like that supplier and he's my friend. So giving us that leverage in supplier negotiations is one, but also highlighting risk in the supply chain. If you've got raw materials with a single source, for example, and that was never really visible before, even if it's not a raw material that you spend a lot of money on, if it's something that can stop your production line, spare parts being a great one, for example, and you only have one supplier, it gives you that visibility and of your total supply chain risk management. Another one is Internet of Things, and this is moving more now towards supply chain rather than procurement, but there are solutions out there now that can give you real-time tracking of freight, which especially in the current market with ocean freight being so tight with capacity and with it absolutely ballooning in price, having that can drive cost savings in other areas through enabling you to not hold so much inventory, or giving you increased operational equipment effectiveness through not having production stoppages resulting from supply chain capacity and lack of visibility in around freight and where your different shipments are, especially in markets like Africa, where a lot of materials are imported from Europe and North America. That I'm sure can be a big one. And I know from experience that there are a lot of, even in a normal geopolitical situation, there are a lot of issues around port capacity in South Africa and in Nigeria. So that one specifically is a really pertinent one. Another one that I'll touch on is around the use of artificial intelligence, AI, and game theory, which, I mean, this is really cutting edge technology, but this can have a big impact in helping drive faster outcomes and better outcomes to sourcing events, enabling you to get better proposals faster and reducing the cycle time of running sourcing events. And if you can do that, then if you've got the saving from a sourcing event that you've been able to run and implement faster, then that's going to give you the P&L improvement, or in the case of, for example, capital equipment, it's going to give you that cost avoidance, or it's going to give you that new piece of machinery faster than you otherwise would have done. Another one is around having cloud-based vendor updates, which, especially for something in South Africa like triple BEE data, can reduce a huge amount of administrative overload that's necessary in updating those records. I know when I worked at Kimberly-Clark, we had one full-time admin person that just in operational procurement that just worked on getting all of the BBBEE certification up to date and uploaded in the system. So they are some real world applications. So let's now look at some of the common issues that procurement tech can solve. So number one, cleaning and categorizing spend data. Number two, automating and digitizing and simplifying procure to pay. Number three, effective contract lifecycle management. Number four, driving SRM. Number five, digitization of sourcing and tendering. RFX means request for proposal quotation information. Managing tail end and non-strategic spend. That's one that I really like, because procurement spend a lot of their time managing high volume but low value purchase orders and non-strategic suppliers. And procurement tech can do a lot around automating and simplifying that. There are also a lot of niche categories out there that are not suited to existing e-sourcing software, that there are now specific solutions out there just for those. Print and promotional items in marketing being one of them. Transportation is another. I used a platform called Freight Tender a few months ago to run a tender on air and ocean freight. And there is a platform out there as well to help with purchasing software as a service or SaaS. Can help with supply chain risk management and mitigation, tracking sustainability initiatives and diversity spend. There's been a big increase in software solutions in the procurement tech space over the last 12 months offering that, and also things that can measure risk versus reward around looking at inventory reduction and optimization too. So there are a huge and very diverse number of problems or number of challenges that ProcureTech can solve, depending on what industry you're in and what particular issues are the most painful for your business. So why do you need this? Well, in all honesty, if you don't embrace change now, the world is moving so quickly that your business may not even exist in 5 years' time. Fax machines and Yahoo email addresses, which are so common in your part of the world, sorry guys, but they're not the tools of modern business. And eliminating, automating, and simplifying a lot of the day-to-day, what I call busy work, is going to be way more cost-effective in the long run than it is having employees performing repetitive administrative tasks. Agility now is the hallmark of a successful business. So we live in times now that small startups can literally disrupt whole industries and beat the Goliaths that are out there that have had such a comfortable market position for so many years. So that's really what I want to leave you with in terms of why you need to act now, because we all remember, I guess, these three examples of companies that were huge companies, very successful in their day, but they were just too slow or refused to acknowledge and implement change. And as a result, we all know what's happened to them. So how do you go about choosing the right solution if this is something that you believe you need to take action on? Well, I think you need to look first at the end and what do you want to achieve? What's the end stage that you want to achieve? What's the particular problem that's causing you the most pain in your business? So rather than just go out there and have someone try and sell software to you, start with the end in mind. What's your biggest challenge? How much are you willing to spend on it, or how much can you convince your CFO to commit to it? What is the opportunity cost of doing nothing? You know, how much are you paying your procurement team in annual salaries? If they're spending 50% of their time doing admin tasks, that's not a good investment. So where are the most wasted resources? Where is the biggest missed savings potential? And if you have that in the back of your head, that will then help you to drive, okay, what specific area do I need to invest in first of all to get the biggest bang for your buck? Of course, money doesn't grow on trees, and if we want to get funds to do this, then we have to convince our CFOs that it's a worthwhile investment. So if we're looking at the hard facts, you know, what's in it for him or her, you need to be able to put an estimate on what cost savings you'll be able to drive through this. What's the effective hourly rate of your procurement team? You know, how much do they earn per hour based on their salaries? And is that a good investment of their time when you look at the tasks that they're currently doing? You know, what's the opportunity cost of them spending half of their time firefighting versus doing strategic work? How many heads could you eliminate in administrative or transactional positions that could drive a bottom line saving? And what would be the improvements to your cash flow through having less maverick spend and potentially being able to maximize payment terms through pooling more spend with strategic suppliers? And then if we're looking at persuasive arguments, I always say this, but if procurement was a manufacturing process, would it be considered lean? If accounts payable was a manufacturing process, you would have lean consultants crawling all over it. Procurement should be seen, procurement should be seen as an asset and not an overhead, just in the same way that sales is. And technology enables skilled knowledge workers to achieve more with less, because technology helps to automate and simplify some of the repeatable, repetitive tasks, and it helps to put the data in a cleaner, more accessible format that saves ultimately a knowledge worker's time having to go out and crunch all of that. Let's not forget that data is the new gold. Yes, Google is a search engine company. Yes, Tinder is a dating app. Yes, Amazon is an e-commerce store, but at their core, they are data companies. That's how they earn their money. That's how these, certainly Amazon and Facebook and Google, that's how they're trillion-dollar companies. How much does this technology cost? Well, these are a few examples. Due to the time, I can't go into these in too much detail, but take a screenshot of this, or after the event, if Sapix is sharing these presentations, then just use this slide just to have a quick snapshot of some of the different features and what you'd be expected to pay for those. But there are a lot, and I deliberately focused on the lower end of the market. There are a lot of solutions out there that you can go out and buy for around or even less than $10,000 US per year. It doesn't cost a six-figure sum and an army of consultants to successfully implement best-of-breed procurement technology. Key takeaways, and I had to get that one in. That's a doner kebab, which is a very famous takeaway in Europe. If you've ever been in Germany or the UK and had a few beers and had the munchies. So digital procurement tools aren't expensive. Often you will get payback for the investment in weeks or months through both hard cost savings as well as efficiency gains. Invest in the technology so as you can automate or simplify non-value added activities to free up the time. Make sure that you've got A players in your team to help implement and drive this technology and move the needle. You know, don't give the project management to someone that's got nothing to do. There was an old saying in one of my former companies that as soon as someone was moved on to special projects, it was the last role that they did before they got fired. Don't behave like that. Bring in your best performers to implement it. And finally, treat procurement, I'll say it again, as an asset, not an overhead, and make sure that you upskill your existing team, hire some data analysts, and even with very affordable procurement, digital procurement solutions, you will see results to your bottom line, as well as making your procurement team a lot happier and a lot more effective because they're not drowning in day-to-day administration. If you'd like to learn some more about digital procurement, I've just started a newsletter. That's the link, second one down, to the podcast that I mentioned in the intro slide. I'm also active on Twitter as well as LinkedIn if you just want to passively follow some of the information and some of the news out there. And there's also a curated Twitter list that I put together of all of the players in the procurement tech industry that have an active presence on Twitter. If you really have an itch that you want to scratch and you realize that you need to take some action pretty quickly and you need some one-on-one guidance on this, then please connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a WhatsApp, or if you want to just have a completely no obligation chat. I need to learn more about your business first before I can propose any potential solutions to the problem. So this really is to learn more about you rather than, I'm definitely not going to try and sell you something on the first 30-minute intro call. So always happy to take the time and learn more about your challenges and what technology may be able to solve those challenges. Finally, a very warm thank you from me. This is my smiley face. When 2 weeks ago, I was in Spain and I went to my favorite smelly cheese producer in the mountains of Andalusia, and that's my happy face to express my gratitude for you listening to the presentation and for your attention. And now we will go into questions and answers if anyone has anything they would like to ask. I realize we're quite tight on time as well, so I will also hang about in the backstage room for about half an hour after this, after I have a quick comfort break, if anyone wants to ask me anything one-on-one there as well.
Thank you, James. That's great. Thank you for that. Yes, I suggest that we maybe go out to the lounge, and then let me just pin you so that you're big. We go out to the lounge area maybe, and you can grab a table there, and then we can have a chat. I want
Definitely. And it would be great also, Claire, if we could check the results of the polls as well just before we sign off.
Just going to read that to you now. So the first one, does your organization use an ERP system? 60% said yes, 40% said no.
Okay, thank you.
And then the other one, I'm just going to open that quickly. Oh, sorry. 100% ye old email, Excel, and SharePoint.
Wow. Okay. How many people answered it?
I can't actually tell you that now in this particular platform.
Wow,
So
100%.
isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
We had,
that's a real eye opener. Yeah.
yeah, we had about 58 people in the conversation.
Fantastic.
Great. Thanks, James. So perhaps we'll just pop onto a SAPIX lounge table, and then you've just got a little like there. I don't know if you saw that. And thank you. And thanks for your time and all your support of SAPIX. And we look forward to your engagement on the lounge tables.
I will hop over to the lounge in 2 minutes. Thank you, Claire.
Great. Thanks for your time. Thanks, everybody, for your involvement. Bye. And sorry, please rate James's talk on the poll tab as well. Thank you.